Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Winter School Jeopardy 2021 COVID edition. As most of you know, I am Georgia Hellinger. I am in EIT 2 under Drew Griesdorn, and this is my third year putting on Winter School Jeopardy. Obviously, we had to do things a little different this year because we were unable to meet in person. So instead, we decided to send out a quick quiz with some recycled Winter School Jeopardy questions, along with several new questions for you guys to answer. For the next 30 minutes or so, I will be going over the answers to the quiz, and at the end of our time, I will announce the results and who our top 3 scores were from both Wednesday and Thursday. But first, I think we should take a moment to honor the great Alex Trebek, who passed away this past November after a 2-year battle with pancreatic cancer, and we would not be playing Jeopardy today if it weren't for him. Alright, so a quick overview of our responses, and thank you to the about 50% of you who did respond. We had 47 total responses, 1 area engineer, 1 employee from survey, 23 inspectors, and 22 project managers / management analysts. The overall average score was a 53%. The inspectors did better than their project managers and averaged 58%. The project managers, management analysts averaged 48%, and we only had 3 people who scored 100%. So overall the results weren't that impressive, but thank you guys for trying. The total amount of points available was 450 points. So you can see in this table over to the right that the average was a 236.81 out of 450 points. The median was 210, and our range was from 40 points to 450 points. And with that, we'll jump into the first question. Question 1 was worth 10 points. How many days shall chemically stabilized subgrade be allowed to cure before placement of the overlying course? A, 7 days, B, 72 hours, C, 5 days, or D, 48 hours. And this question was recycled from last year, so we're testing a little bit to see if you guys retained any knowledge from last year's Winter School Jeopardy. So the answer to that was C, 5 days, and that came from spec 20605D, curing and construction of chemically stabilized subgrade. And you can see I highlighted from the spec, it says cure the chemically stabilized subgrade for at least 5 days before the placement of the overlying course. 27 people answered that question correctly, so that's about 57% of you. Alright, question 2 was worth 20 points. At what temperature will the city measure asphalt binder by the gallon? A, 250 degrees Fahrenheit, B, 300 degrees Fahrenheit, C, 285 degrees Fahrenheit, or D, 325 degrees Fahrenheit. And the answer to that one was B, 300 degrees Fahrenheit. That answer came from spec 10901, acceptance, measurement, and payment. Measurement of quantities. There is a table there in the spec, and it says the city will measure the following materials by the gallon at the following temperatures, and it shows asphalt binder at 300 degrees Fahrenheit. 22 of you answered that correctly, so about 47% got that one right. Question 3 was worth 10 points. It was a fill in the blank. Embankment material, excluding rock and RPCC, shall be spread in successive horizontal loose lifts not to exceed blank inches. The answer to that was 8 inches. That came from spec 20306, roadway excavation and embankment, spreading and compacting. You can see from the spec book right there, it says spread all embankment material except for rock in 20306C and RPCC in 20306D in successive horizontal loose lifts not to exceed 8 inches or 200 millimeters in thickness. 29 of you answered that correctly, so about 62%. Question 4 was worth 10 points. All fiber work that will disrupt system devices or infrastructure shall be limited to the blank weekend of each month, unless specifically permitted in the plans or otherwise directed by the City Fiber Construction Coordinator. A, first, B, second, C, third, or D, fourth. And the answer to that one was C, the third weekend of the month. And that came from Supplemental Specification 1620, Fiber Optic Cable Material, Installation, and Testing Requirements. And we have pulled directly out of that supplemental spec, all work that will disrupt system devices or infrastructure shall be limited to the third weekend of each month, unless it has been specifically permitted in the plans or otherwise directed by City Fiber Construction Coordinator. The third weekend of the month includes the hours of 9 p.m. Friday through 5 a.m. Monday. 25 of you answered that one correctly, so about 53% of the responses got that one right. Question 5 was worth 10 points. For replacement work of 18-inch straight curb, the curb shall be removed at an existing joint or no more than blank feet from an existing joint. A, 2 feet, B, 3 feet, C, 4 feet, or D, 5 feet. And this question had the most amount of people answer it correctly. So the answer to that was D, 5 feet. That answer came from Standard Drawing 2000 for 18-inch straight curb. In the notes it says, for replacement work, the curb shall be removed at an existing joint or no closer than 5 feet from an existing joint. So 42 of you answered that correctly, and that's about 89%. Question 6 was worth 20 points. It was a fill in the blank. The maximum center-to-center spacing between adjacent wheels while proof rolling shall not exceed blank inches. And the answer to that was 32 inches. That came from spec 20406, subgrade compaction and proof rolling / test rolling. There you can see note number 4, a maximum center-to-center spacing between adjacent wheels not exceeding 32 inches. 28 of you answered that correctly, and that is 59%. Question 7 was worth 20 points. What is the minimum required Portland cement content in non-residential roller compacted concrete base? A, 300 pounds per cubic yard, B, 325 pounds per cubic yard, C, 350 pounds per cubic yard, or D, 375 pounds per cubic yard? The answer to that was C, 350 pounds per cubic yard. That came from spec 30703, roller compacted concrete base mixed design. You can see there it says roller compacted concrete base, the minimum Portland cement content shall be 350 pounds per cubic yard. 30 of you answered that correctly, and that's about 64%. Question 8 was worth 30 points. If transporting hot asphalt concrete at prevailing air temperatures below blank degrees Fahrenheit, or if the length of haul exceeds blank miles, truck beds shall be insulated to maintain workable mixed temperature. A, 55 degrees Fahrenheit, 25 miles. B, 50 degrees Fahrenheit, 20 miles. C, 55 degrees Fahrenheit, 20 miles, or D, 50 degrees Fahrenheit, 25 miles. And the answer to that was B, 50 degrees Fahrenheit, 20 miles. That came from spec 40111, asphalt concrete pavements general hauling. You can see there at the bottom, if transporting hot asphalt concrete at prevailing air temperatures below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, or if the length of haul exceeds 20 miles, insulate all truck beds to maintain workable mixed temperature and ensure that all covers are fastened to exclude the wind. 32 of you answered that correctly. That is about 68%. Question 9 was worth 20 points. What is the diameter of a typical water curb box lid? A, 4 5/8 inches. B, 4 3/4 inches. C, 4 7/8 inches. Or D, 5 inches. The answer to that was C, 4 7/8 inches. That came from the Water Standard Drawing L1001. And you can see there it shows that the diameter of the lid would be 4 7/8 inches. 22 of you answered that correctly, so only about 47%. Question 10 was worth 30 points. The allowable leakage during a pressure test of 800 feet of 24-inch water line is A, 1.59 gallons per hour, B, 1.99 gallons per hour, C, 1.16 gallons per hour, or D, 1.49 gallons per hour. The answer to that is A, 1.59 gallons per hour. And to get that answer, you can either use the formula that is on Standard Drawing L6640, or you could have used the table as you can see highlighted there. And 21 of you answered that correctly, so only 45%. Question 11 was worth 10 points. Fill in the blank. The center of streetlight foundations shall be located blank feet off the back of curb unless otherwise specified. The answer to that was 3 feet. You can find that answer in either MIS 200, 201, 202, or 203. All of the streetlight foundation drawings. You can see in that picture to the right, they have the back of curb and the center of the foundation is shown to be 3 feet or as specified. 26 people answered that correctly, about 55%. Question 12 was worth 10 points. The pole service opening on downtown light poles shall be located on the blank of the pole. A, curb/street side, B, north side, C, building/sidewalk side, or D, south side. The answer to that was C, the building/sidewalk side. You could get the answer to that one from MIS 308, the drawing for the downtown streetlight poles. 38 people answered that correctly for about 81%. That was one of the top correctly answered questions. Question 13 was worth 30 points, and this was one of 2 most missed questions. This was a fill in the blank. 32-inch concrete traffic pool boxes shall have an outer diameter of blank inches. All right, the answer to that one was 44 inches. And that came from standard drawing 4022. You can see over to the left, that picture pulled from the standard drawing. It calls out that the entire outer diameter of the concrete pool box should be 44 inches. And again, this was one of 2 most incorrectly answered questions. Only 15 people answered this one correctly, so about 32% of you got this one right. Question 14 was worth 10 points. Fill in the blank. Density gauge quality control testing on asphalt shall be conducted according to city supplement blank. The answer to that was 1055, and you can see there, City Supplement 1055, asphalt mat density by gauge testing, general. This supplement defines equipment, procedures, and reporting methods for asphalt mat density testing and acceptance. 21 people answered that correctly for about 45%. Question 15 was worth 30 points. When compiling red line drawings for chlorination requests, line work that is changed more than blank inches horizontally, plan, or blank inches vertically, profile, shall be redrawn. A, 12 and 12, B, 18 and 12, C, 12 and 24, or D, 24 and 18. The answer to that one was B, 18 and 12. That answer is found on the chlorination request checklist that is on DPU's webpage. You can see there for the requirements for the as-built plans to be submitted, they would like for you to redraw line work that is changed by more than 18 inches horizontally or 12 inches vertically. Only 17 people answered that correctly, about 36% of the responses. Question 16 was worth 20 points. When applying thermoplastic pavement markings to pavements older than 6 months, the pavement surface and the ambient air temperature shall be no less than blank degrees Fahrenheit and rising. A, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, B, 40 degrees Fahrenheit, C, 60 degrees Fahrenheit, D, 65 degrees Fahrenheit. And this question was recycled from last year. The answer to that was C, 60 degrees Fahrenheit. And that came from spec 64404, thermoplastic pavement marking application. You can see there it says, if applying thermoplastic to pavements that are older than 6 months, ensure that both the pavement surface and the ambient air temperature at the time of application are not less than 60 degrees Fahrenheit and rising. 29 responses got that correctly for about 62%. Question 17 was worth 10 points. What is the maximum depth of a single layer of item 301 asphalt concrete base? And this question was also recycled from last year. And the answer to that one was 6 inches. That answer came from spec 30104, asphalt concrete base, spreading and finishing. You can see there that the first sentence says, ensure that the maximum compacted depth of any one layer is 6 inches. 37 people answered that one correctly, so about 79% of the responses got that one right. Question 18 was worth 10 points. It was a fill in the blank. Compaction of item 304 aggregate base shall be measured according to supplemental spec blank. This question was also recycled from last year. The answer to that was supplemental spec 1501. And you can find that answer through spec 30405, aggregate base compaction. It says there, the city will measure compaction according to supplemental specification 1501. 34 people answered that correctly, so about 72% got that one right. Alright, question 19 was worth 30 points, and it was a fill in the blank. When relocating an existing fire hydrant, a second watch valve should be installed within 2 feet of the relocated hydrant if the new hydrant lead exceeds blank feet in length. The answer to that is 15 feet. And that came from spec 80906, fire hydrant relocation. And it says there, if the new hydrant lead exceeds 15 feet in length, install a second watch valve and restrain within 2 feet of the relocated hydrant. 28 people answered that one correctly, about 60%. Question 20 was worth 30 points, and this was the second of the 2 most missed questions. What test is conducted on pile driving operations to configure driving capacities? And this question was also recycled from last year. Alright, the answer to this one was the dynamic load test, and that is from spec 52302, dynamic load test. You can see there in the description it says, this work consists of establishing driving criteria for all the piles of a specified shape, cross-section, and ultimate bearing capacity or as specified on the plans to be installed in the structure. 15 people answered this correctly, so about 32%. A popular answer for this one was the static load test, and that is obviously incorrect. The static load test is from spec 506, and that one is used to determine the ultimate bearing value of the pile. So that's not used to establish the driving criteria. All right, question 21 was worth 10 points. In the event that work requires a shutoff of any public or private utilities, the contractor must notify the affected subscribers at least blank hours prior to the shutoff unless otherwise directed by the engineer. A, 24, B, 36, C, 48, or D, 60? And the answer to that was C, 48 hours. And that came from the spec book, spec 10507F, control of work, cooperation with utilities, utility shutoff. And you can see there, it says the contractor shall make such notification at least 48 hours prior to such shutoff unless otherwise directed by the engineer. 30 people answered that one correctly, so about 64%. Question 22 was worth 20 points. For topsoil to be considered loamy, ensure that the fraction passing the number 10 sieve does not contain more than blank % clay. A, 35, B, 40, C, 45, or D, 50? And the answer to that was B, 40%. And that came from spec 65302, topsoil furnished and placed materials. You can see right there it says for topsoil to be considered loamy, ensure that the fraction passing the number 10 sieve does not contain more than 40% clay. 28 people answered that correctly, so about 60%. All right, question 23 was worth 20 points. It was a fill in the blank. Span wire clamps shall be made of blank, capable of resisting a load of 12,500 pounds minimum without permanent distortion. And the answer to that was galvanized steel. That came from standard drawing 4170 for strain poles. It was note number 2. It says right there, span wire clamp shall be galvanized steel capable of resisting a load of 12,500 pounds minimum without permanent distortion. Only 16 people answered this one correctly, so about 34%. This was one of the second most missed questions. Most people just answered steel, or we had a few stainless steel answers, but we were looking for galvanized steel. So if you didn't get galvanized, you didn't get points for this one. Question 24 was worth 20 points. What does CTSS stand for? All right, the answer to that one was Columbus Traffic Signal System. I pulled that from the supplement 1620. I'm sure you can find it in many other places, but that would be a question for probably Ray or Nick, not me. But you can see there they have written out Columbus Traffic Signal System, parentheses, CTSS. 27 people answered that one correctly for about 57%. And those of you that missed that one had some pretty interesting answers that gave me a good chuckle. So I appreciate your effort in trying to figure out what CTSS could stand for. All right, question 25. This is the last question. It was worth 10 points. The fiber optic cable identification tag for City of Columbus Department of Technology, Franklin County Engineers Office, and ODOT are all black text on blank. A, pink, B, yellow, C, blue, or D, white. And the answer to that one was B, yellow. And that came from supplement 1620 10A cable identification wraps. You can see there is a table in that supplemental spec that kind of writes out that the City of Columbus Department of Technology, Franklin County Engineers Office, and ODOT will all be black text on a yellow wrap. 16 of you answered that one correctly, so 34%. This was one of the other second most missed questions. Most of you put pink. That's kind of what we talked about last year in winter school. The question that we had about cable identification tags was for the City of Columbus traffic. Those ones are black text on a pink wrap. So switched it up on you guys, and I tripped most of you up. So good job remembering that we talked about pink last year, but that's not the answer this year. All right, so our winners for Wednesday. First place goes to Gary Hutchinson. Second place is Carl Walters. And then we had a three-way tie for third between Jason Webster, Kevin Smith, and Terry Kegley. And we will do this random spinner off to the right here to pick our third place winners. And it looks like Kevin Smith will be the third place winner for Wednesday. Good job, you guys. I assume we'll probably be sending you all out an email regarding, how or where, when you can pick up your gift cards. I believe that Dan was going to get Subway gift cards, but when we send out an email, it'll have more information about that. And our Thursday winners, we had a three-way tie for first place between Evan Bell, Jonathan Sampson, and Steve Henney. You guys all received 100%, so good job. You guys will also get an email after winter school is over regarding getting your gift cards, and that'll be that. All right, well, thank you, everybody. Hopefully next year we can do winter school Jeopardy in person again, or we might do the quiz format. Who knows? We'll see what your guys' feedback is, and we'll go from there. But enjoy the rest of winter school.